Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos, and in today's video we're going to take a look at what we know so far about gearing in patch 10.2, things that are going to stay the same, things that are different, and kind of an early draft of the implications of those things, which variables we need to wait, and like what they might mean depending on what the answers are to those, and sort of how the kind of first few weeks might play out differently than they did in patch 10.1. So first off, we have some news that have come out earlier today that says, actually, I guess yesterday by the time you're watching this, that says the Dragonflight Mastery achievement is returning in Season 3, awarding an Emerald Mark of Mastery to players who clear a Yggdrasil on Heroic, get Challenger 2 in rated PvP, or earn Keystone Master. Like last season, players should be able to use this mark to purchase a single piece of Heroic level tier. This isn't confirmed that it's still Heroic, but it seems likely. And it is important because that means that if you are at the AOTC or Keystone Master or obviously the PvP level, you can get that one piece of tier early on. But unlike last season, you can also get the Revival Catalyst, which is available starting in the very first week of the season. Now, the Revival Catalyst is open on week 1, but it's going to only gain a charge every 2 weeks instead of every week. There are also these Flame Warped Curios, which are going to be presumably the same as Void Touch Curios. Blizzard hasn't posted about this, but it's now in the PTR, the vendor that lets you use these. Interestingly, on the vendor, these have upgrade tracks on them, the Curios. I assume that's just a weird current thing. I assume that's not any actual functional change. I think that it's hard to imagine how that would affect these items, but it seems like the Curios and the Mark of Mastery are carrying over from last season, but there is now the Revival Catalyst available on week 1. So what does this mean for tier? Well, if you're a player who is clearing the raid on normal difficulty and doing a few bosses of Heroic, I think it's reasonable to expect that in most cases you should be able to get your 2 set. I mean, you can basically definitely get it on the second week if you get the Keystone Master achievement, and 4 set shouldn't be long after. And if you get any tier awarded to you in the raid, right? If you get any boss kills dropping you tier, you'll get it. So if you don't raid at all, you get 1 tier piece for free on the first week from your catalyst. As soon as you get Keystone Master, you get a second piece of tier. Now, Keystone Master is hard to achieve on week 1. Very hard to achieve on week 1 because you don't get Tyrannical and Fortified score. But as early as the second week, if you are playing the character a lot and you do every dungeon at level like 14, you'll get the Keystone Master achievement, which that's a second piece of tier. Then on the third week, you get another Catalyst charge. And then if you don't do any other stuff that would give you tier, you'd have 4 piece on week 5. But every single tier that you got awarded to you from the raid or that you open in your vault is going to be pulling that back by 2 weeks, right? So you could have 4 piece on week 3, plausibly, or week 2. Now, one thing that you're going to need to think about is, should I cash in my Catalyst charges and my Mark of Mastery early or late? Because if you cash them in early, maybe you'll make your 2 piece that week, right? But what if you then see that if you catalyze a tier helmet or you use a Mark of Mastery to buy a tier helmet and then your vault has a tier helmet in it next week, right? That's a potential catastrophe. So that's going to be something that you'll have to think about if that ends up happening to you. But other than that, I mean, this should be a very, very fast tier acquisition season, even if you do little to no raid. And if you do at least a full clear of normal or more, and especially if you're doing AOTC raiding, I think that the majority of AOTC raiders with the Mark of Mastery, the Catalyst week 1, will have 4 piece on either week 1 or 2, which is very good. I think that is great. Okay, we also have some other changes to talk about and some other loot implications that I want to go into. But first, a word from this video's sponsor, which is u.gg/wow. This is a place where you can go and you can take a look at how different classes are performing in different parts of the game with some data-generated tier lists. I'm a big fan of the tier list as a format, although, of course, data-generated, so you gotta, sometimes, as a creator of analytical tier lists from time to time, I'll say that there's pros and cons to both ways, but you can see sort of how different things are performing in Raid and M+. But you can also click through and you can pick up talent builds. You can pick up enchants, gems, trinkets, builds, and crucially, you can do this for Raid and M+. You do it for any difficulty, and you can do it for specific bosses, which is extremely valuable, especially if you're on a new class, a new spec, trying to pick something up. And you want to kind of get your feet under you really quickly. This is a good way to kind of get a build that is tested and that people are using in actual content. So that's the sponsor of our video. Link in the description below. Thanks so much to them for sponsoring this video. Let's talk a little bit about crests, because crests are the other big thing that is changing in patch 10.2. So we have some upgrade track changes that have been announced. That mean that there's an extra level to the hero track, right? Effectively, the hero track will go up to, I'm going to convert to our current item levels. I don't know if this is smart or stupid, but effectively, hero track would go up to 444 instead of 441, and myth track will go up to 450 instead of 447. In addition to that, crests are now, there's no fragments anymore. Crests just go straight into your inventory tab, and you can collect 90 crests per week instead of 150 fragments per week, but you need 15 crests to do something that, so basically you can collect 90 instead of 150, which is 6 upgrades per week instead of 10. So it's a nerf to how many upgrades you can do in that first week, right? And this has all been covered in some previous videos, but what I want to talk now about is some of the implications of this, and particularly the implication for this bit here. Crests can now be traded up for higher level crests once reaching the lower crests item level or higher. So if you can get every piece of gear to a level where you can't use Whelpling's crests anymore, right? If no upgrades would ever cost you Whelpling's crest because you've already matched that eye level in all your slots, then you can trade up your Whelpling's crest to Drake crests, and the same is true all the way up to aspects, which is very relevant, I think, for early gearing in this patch. Even for no matter how low or high end you are, this is a relevant system, and it just matters which of the crests it's most relevant for you on. But what we don't know is very important for this. We've seen the items, they've been data mined now. We don't know if these are purchased at a 1-to-1 ratio or if they're purchased at a discount, right? Or like if you have to give up, right? If I'm purchasing 15 Drake streaming crests, is this going to cost me 15 Whelplings or 30 or 90, right? Like all of those are valid numbers that could be the answer. If it's 15, and crucially, if this doesn't go against my weekly cap for Drakes, which historically items like this haven't been affected by the cap, but that is an important variable as well, then this would be huge for the itemization process early in the patch, because basically this would create an incentive to really try not to use any crests, but to farm all 4 of them, because Whelpling's crests effectively would be aspect crests if you can upgrade them all the way up. And the thing that is also super important about this patch is that unlike last patch, those aspect crests, there's a lot you can do with them early on. In the last patch, you could use an aspect crest once per item to bring it from 437 to 441. And otherwise, people were talking about bringing them down into Worm's crest last season because you didn't have any other use for them besides crafted gear. Now, crafted gear is still a good use for crests. The item level on crafted gear has been nerfed by 3 item levels in each slot, but it's still extremely good, right? 483 compared to, so effectively 444 instead of 447 crafted gear. Still extremely, extremely potent, and will be a worthwhile use of crests, I think. And I think you're still going to want to commit aspects to those. The opportunity cost of that has gotten higher because you're going to have to use effectively more of your, like you're getting less item level per aspect crest for doing that because of the nerf to crafted gear. So maybe you won't actually send aspect crest on crafted gear in the first couple of weeks. But the play pattern that I'm envisioning, if this upgrade is available at a ratio that's not too costly, and if it does ignore the weekly cap on whichever one you're upgrading into, if both of those things are true, then what you're going to want to do is farm all 4 different types of crest for the first couple of weeks, but try your absolute best to never spend any of the lower tier ones, because you can upgrade, you can get to a point where you don't need any Drake's Crest without ever actually using any Drake's Crest, and then you can upgrade all your Drake's Crest into Worm's Crest. And potentially, you can do that without spending all your Worm's Crest. You can get to a point where you can upgrade a bunch of them into Aspect Crest, because It's sort of like last season. You're going to want to try really hard. If you're a really high end player, you're going to want to try really hard to never upgrade something that is below item level 470. Last season, this was true for 424 to 430 something, 432. That range was really valuable to try and avoid using any Worms Crest in that range. And next season, if it works the way that I laid out a minute ago, that instead is going to hold for 470 and below. Anywhere below 470, you're going to want to try your absolute best to hold on to those crests and only commit them to really valuable items. And in that case, ideally, it's 463 up to 470. And as soon as you're above 470, you're starting to feel okay about spending your crests on those items. But if you're like a Mythic Raider, if you're going to be getting access to Mythic Raid loot, and even if you're doing the last few bosses of Heroic, you want to put yourself in a position where you can loot items that will mean that you won't have to spend those crests. And unlike last season, you don't sort of have this vibe of, oh, I'll just spend these Aspect Crests now, or these Whelplings Crests, these Drake's Crests now, because they'll be, I can't use them for anything good later. Effectively, this season, it's going to be true, again, pending all those caveats about this upgrade system. It's going to be true. It's just not going to be true anymore, right? Like those Drake's Crests are now valuable again. And so you're going to want to be much more careful about using them early on. I intend to make a video once we actually know the full specifics of this, with like kind of here's the strategy that I would use if I was this different type of player, if I was expecting to clear AOTC in the first week versus if I was expecting to clear just normal in the first week, if I was farming 20s versus if I was farming 16s, and to try and kind of give you an idea of what's going to be optimal. But my early thought here is that this is very likely going to mean more farming of... So you will need more weeks worth of Aspect Crests to be fully BIS than last season, especially because unlike last season, Myth Track is in at launch, which means you have way more uses of those Aspect Crests, and you're getting a little bit more than half as many per week. So those upgrades are going to be giga valuable to effectively counteract that nerf. And my belief is that if it works that way, if you could trade these things up 1-to-1 and they ignore the cap, it's going to be like as powerful as last time, and you're going to be able to get Giga Biss on like week 2 again, if you farm a full set of 12 aspects, 12 worms, 12 drakes, and 12 whelplings. Upgrade all the drakes and whelplings to worms, use a few of the worms, and then upgrade the rest to aspects, and bang, full for whatever it is, 483, 489. Potentially still fairly early in the patch if you're disciplined about it, and the big thing that this is going to involve is getting a lot of these 470 is okay, 473 and 476 from the end of Heroic is better, and obviously anything from Mythic or from your Great Vault is best, because every time you get one of those items, it's going to save you a bunch of crests and get you closer to that breakpoint where you unlock the ability to upgrade your lower level crests. But that's going to be a huge power spike, and it's going to be something that adds more value back towards guilds that are doing splits, and players that are logging in and doing a bunch of keys, right? If you're able to get your full set of 470s versus somebody who would, maybe have upgraded a 463 or upgraded a 454 or something like that, that's a lot of steps of crest, right? An upgrade of a 454 up to 470, that's going to cost you, 6 total crests, which is a lot of your weekly allotment of 24 total potential usable crests. Again, we don't know the ratio that those lower ones convert upwards at, but yeah, a little bit of a rambling thoughts section of this video, but I wanted to kind of just put it out there, start the conversation about how these are going to work. I'll make more of a video later, and also I'll steal some good points that are made in the comments of this video for that video, so thanks in advance if you're one of those people who noticed something that I didn't about the implications of this system. But I think it's interesting to talk about and think about, and potentially to see if that is how Blizzard actually wants this to work. I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing, but I do think they've got to think about this when they decide what the ratio is for these and whether they respect the cap or not, exactly how they want this to look. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what you think. Again, interested in your perspective given the way that you engage with the content. So if you're going to say something about how you feel about the upgrade system in particular, it'd be very helpful for me if you would say, like, here's what content I did or do in the first few weeks of the patch, and here's how I feel about this upgrade system. That would make it, I think, easier for me to kind of get a vibe check. Anyways, thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.